What is good, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video, and this one I'm going to break down what's going on with the overall market, what you should be watching for moving forward. I'm also going to break down some very important levels for Nvidia, Tesla, SPY, and the QQQ, and many tickers out there. Talk about the news that's coming out and when the big move is going to be coming to the markets, as we have some big data dropping very soon. I'm also going to briefly talk about some bearish news that came out for Tesla, but before I do anything like this, let me just mention a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so take none of this as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please check out the Moomoo link, which is down below and in the description. If you sign up for Moomoo, the link down below, and deposit $100 into the account, you're guaranteed 5 free stocks plus a $50 cash reward. The offer ends in 8 days, so check it out before they run out. With that out of the way, let's get on with the video. All right, so Nvidia came down pretty hard yesterday. I'm sure you guys remember that this big drop happened. And since the drop during the first 30 minutes, this thing was just range bound between this 465 resistance and this supply zone. I'm sorry, this demand zone down here at around this 452 to 456 area. So we're basically seeing it going back and forth between supply and demand, back and forth, not really doing anything too big. And the question is, which way will it go? Well, whichever way it breaks will determine which way it ends up moving in. And so far, it's kind of tight, very sideways. So we're just waiting for earnings for the time being. In fact, the entire market is just waiting for Nvidia's earnings, and it's going to dictate how the market ends up moving. Now, some other big news came out for the morning for Tesla investors. Tesla's German plant has lowered its production targets. This is due to many different factors, from slower output. You could argue that that's one of the reasons. Another reason could be the fact that Tesla's trying to increase their overall scalability. And in doing so, they may have to cut production, at least for the time being, during a growth phase. It could also be because of external macroeconomic factors, and the list goes on. But this overall is bad news for Tesla, unfortunately. So we're going to be watching how this ends up affecting Tesla. Now, when it comes to other pieces of news, we have Nvidia's earnings after the market closes. You have to be ready for this. We're approaching it, and we're going to see some very, very crazy volatility. Now, looking at some data before that ends up happening, we have the PMI report coming out 15 minutes after the market opens. In fact, we have multiple of them. We have the global manufacturing PMI, we have the global services ones, and the global composite 15 minutes after the market opens. And then 30 minutes after open, we have the new home sales data coming out. So all of this data is going to cause some volatility. If the PMI is too low, we're going to see some downside. The market may slow down a bit. If PMI is decent, the market may actually bounce. We're going to be watching to see how close these levels are to what the expectations are. So make sure you're prepared for this. Expect volatility during the first 15 and 30 minutes because of all this data, and just get ready for that. Now, when it comes to or at least a couple of things that CNBC is talking about for the market, we're just waiting for Nvidia so far. We're going to see what this ends up causing for the markets. For retail, it wasn't really a good day for the past 2 days, as Dick's Sporting Goods and Macy's have cut their guidance. And then right here, UPS has also announced that their workers officially approved a 5-year labor deal on Monday, which is very important. And this led to the share price, I believe, going up. Nothing too crazy though, so it's just worth noting. And then besides that, there's nothing else that's too crazy going on right now. There's been some talks about Hawaii, and my thoughts go out to everyone out there. I want the best for everyone that's been affected. So this is very important, causing lots of economic losses, not just in terms of money or anything like that, but also people's lives. Those are also extremely important. I just wish the best for everyone. Anyways, going back to the market and going back to the charts, things are still looking very indecisive by the market. I mean, Nvidia is kind of range bound, like I was saying. We've been range bound, so if you want to see it break out, it needs to hold 460. If that breaks, watch 465 as resistance. If we get above this, there's potential for it to push up to 470 plus, 475, then 480 to 483. Those are some resistance levels. For support, you're going to be watching 456, and if that breaks, it could come all the way down to about 452. Then below that, we have 450, 446, then we have like 442, 436, and the list goes on. From a technical standpoint, you could argue that this is like a bearish structure, but there are no guarantees just yet. It is trying to it could be flagging right here, so you could argue that there's a flag forming. Not a guarantee just yet, though. I'm not going to guarantee anything. We're just going to be watching which way it ends up breaking. So it's very indecisive approaching its earnings, kind of in the middle. So it may remain range bound for some time with high volatility in the morning. But if it remains range bound, it may not do anything until we get closer to its earnings. So it might just be kind of boring. For SPY, we're kind of range bound as well. If we want to break out, you want to see it break and hold above 440. If that breaks, you're going to be watching 440.6. If that breaks, watch 441. to basically potentially being tested. If it breaks down, you're going to be watching it come down to about 438. If that fails us, watch 437.5. If 437.5 fails us, it's going to start sinking all the way down to much lower levels. That's going to be the big breaking point, and that could sink this thing down to about this like 435 area. How are things looking from a technical standpoint? A little bit weaker, as we are technically making lower highs, and now we have this new resistance. So sorry if this chart's a little bit messy, but basically we have this new resistance right here that's forming, where we're just going to be testing this area as we're getting tighter and tighter. I'm going to be watching which way SPY ends up breaking from this wedge that's like kind of like forming, but it's not looking that great so far. Technically, it's just I'm not really seeing like the same amount of strength that we saw earlier. So it's not looking as great, as we have a tendency of kind of like gapping up and slowing down, just like how it happened yesterday. We kind of gapped up and slowed down as the day went on. The same thing happened today during the pre-market. So we might get some very sideways price action today, waiting for Nvidia's earnings. But just to be safe, be open-minded. For the QQQ, not looking that great in my eyes. I mean, we have this potential channel that's developing on it as well. You could draw out this trend line just like this. We technically have this resistance right about here. Now, do we also have support developing? That's like the same thing that I'd be wondering. I'm not going to draw out support until we see how this thing opens first. I'm going to wait for that. Let's wait for open first thing in the morning. But it doesn't really matter, because we are technically stuck between supply and demand. And this is what I'm talking about. So right here we have supply, right? This thing is getting rejected off this 366 zone. And then we have this demand zone around this 362 zone. We tend to go back and forth and back and forth. We did this for the past like almost 2 days. So with that said, I mean, in my opinion, if it breaks below 362, we might see this thing sink down to 360, then 357, right? If it tries to push up, you're going to be watching resistance at 365. If that breaks, then 366. This entire 366 to 367 zone is going to be our resistance. We're kind of stuck right now, so I think it's just going to continue to go back and forth and kind of chop around for the time being. We might see some high volatility in the morning, but then after that, it's just not looking like it's picking a direction. So watch and see which way it breaks to set the tone for the day. And until then, we're just going to be patient. One thing that's not looking that great right now is Tesla, because Tesla started sinking, and it's been sinking quite a bit basically after this bearish news came out about their production cuts. But here's how I'm seeing Tesla move. So we have this resistance that is developed right here. This blue line is acting as resistance. It might and possibly could be forming like a head and shoulders here, with this being the head, this left shoulder right here, and maybe like a right shoulder forming. So this would be like the head and shoulders like pattern playing out. If not, we could get a back test and a rejection off the trend line. But if you want to be bullish, you want to see Tesla break above 230 and then break above, this trend line and break towards 235 plus for us to turn bullish. That is looking less likely looking at the current trend, as we have bearish news. But just to be safe, watch for the back test. So like I said before, 230 is going to be resistance. We need to hold above 230 for there to be hope for the bulls. If we get a backtest and reject off 230, or if we break above it and reject off this trend line and then come down, you're going to be watching the next support below that, which is 228. We're currently testing that as resistance, which was previous support. And if that breaks, then there's 225, 221, 215, and the list goes on for Tesla. We also have this imbalance down in 221. It looks more bearish in my eyes because we have this imbalance down here, and also because we have a downtrend. It's technically establishing lower highs. And then you could also draw out this possible channel. So there's a possibility we could draw something out like this. Is this going to last for Tesla? I mean, honestly, guys, we just have to watch it very carefully and see if this ends up developing how it could. So we're going to be watching this channel to see if this ends up like playing out for Tesla. And for the time being, it's best to just be patient to see if Tesla continues to maintain this area, this range. That's one way you could look at it, but it overall looks more bearish. So these two possibilities look more likely. These arrows right here looks a little bit weaker. So I just want to note that with the bearish news, but we're going to see if Tesla can break resistance or not. Always try to be open-minded. Apple's also not looking that great. I just want to mention that, yes, Apple's like on an uptrend, right? But it's forming a rising wedge. So if Apple ends up like getting a break to the downside, if it breaks below 177 and starts sinking, the market could start sinking after either Jerome Powell's speech or Nvidia's earnings or something like that. Possibly, not a guarantee. So we're going to be watching to see if this ends up playing out or not. And besides that, guys, I'm just going to briefly talk about how the dollar is kind of pumping a bit, which is a bearish signal. It's currently sitting at resistance at 104. We're going to be watching the VIX at resistance as well at 17. Could this thing break out or not? It really depends. And besides that, watch all your levels very carefully. Can Google hold above 130. If it does so, you're going to be watching this thing get above 131, or does it end up breaking below 129, which would sink it down to like the 128.11 area. Does Amazon keep holding? Because right now everything's very tight and choppy. Could we break above 135 to start pushing for 136 plus, or do we end up breaking down to 133? If that breaks, 132 could be tested. And then for Meta, last but not least for Meta, can we break above 290? If we break that, it could get a push all the way up to about, 292 plus. If it breaks below 286, you're going to be watching 285 as support, and if that fails, it's going to start sinking. So we're kind of in the middle. Watch 285 as support, and then for major resistance, watch 290 and see which way it breaks from there. All right, guys, so the market's still indecisive. We're just going to be watching these levels. And with that said, I just thank you all so much for listening. The market to the moon, as the long term is still incredibly bright despite all these fluctuations. And get ready for Nvidia's earnings and the high volatility coming out for the morning. I'll see you guys very soon. Thank you and peace out.